In the next few broadcasts, I'm going to repeat some of the things that happened with the Rebbe and Rebbe Leibel Shapiro. Rebbe Leibel Shapiro was the one that used to come to the Rebbe many, many years for Tishrei, and some years even for other occasions. And he would take pictures and videos of the Rebbe. And many of the pictures and videos that we have are the ones that he took. He's a relative of ours, of our family. He's my father's first cousin. So whenever he used to come, he used to stay in the house of my brother Gabriel and his wife Rachel. He even used to tell the Rebbe about it, spoke to the Rebbe about it sometimes, etc. So I'm going to repeat over some of the things that happened with him and the Rebbe without any special order. Some of the things I remember myself, since he's a relative of ours, I was involved, so I remember myself. But to make sure, I confirmed it with my brother Gabriel because he stayed in the house, so he knows these stories exact. And some of the things I heard from my brother Gabriel. The first thing is that the first year that he came and he took pictures of the Rebbe, so the Rebbe told him at one occasion he should tell the Bochrim that they should learn Torah with the same merits, the same energy as he takes pictures. So he went into the Zal and gave a patch on the table, gave a bang on the table, and he announced to the Bochrim that the Rebbe told him to tell the Bochrim that they should learn Torah with the same energy as he takes the pictures. Another time when he came to New York, it wasn't for Tishrei, it was for the bar mitzvah of my nephew Gabriel's son, Mordechai Olav Hasholem. Since he was a Korev, a relative of ours, and he also stayed in Gabriel's house, but mainly he came to that bar mitzvah. What he used to do whenever he used to come to the Rebbe, the first thing would go to the Rebbe's house, wait outside knowing when the Rebbe was going to 770, and say Kiviyochel hello to the Rebbe. So this time also, he came to the Rebbe's house, waiting for the Rebbe to go out. When the Rebbe went out and he saw him, opened the door and he saw him, the Rebbe said to him, Gute Sachen kommen Gerichterheit. With a smile he said, good things come when you don't expect it. One year, when he went to the Rebbe, when he came in the month of Elul, and he went to the Rebbe's house as he always did, so the Rebbe invited him to go into his car to get a ride to 770. So he tells the Rebbe, Was var aponim wird es haben bei die Bochrim? What would it look like to the Bochrim if I do this? And the Rebbe smiled. But the second time when this happened, and the Rebbe invited him to go into the car, he actually went into the car and he came to 770, and everyone was wondering how he came to the 770 in the Rebbe's car, but the Rebbe invited him to come into the car. Once, by dollars, and he would stand there and take pictures, he suggested to the Rebbe that the Rebbe should go to the Eil on Monday. The Seder used to be that the Rebbe would give out dollars on Sunday, and then after he would give out dollars, he would travel to the Eil. But it was very hard, obviously. Dollars took so long, and then the Rebbe would go to the Eil after that. So he suggested once, he said to the Rebbe that the Rebbe should go to the Eil on Monday. So the Rebbe said to him, if I would do that, I would have to be Matir Neder. And the Rebbe continued going on Sunday. But sometimes after that Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe changed, and the Rebbe started going to the Eil on Monday. It seems like we don't know for sure that because it was after Rosh Hashanah and Erev Rosh Hashanah we make a Hatoras Nedorim, but maybe the Rebbe had a mind for this and that's why he started changing that. But we don't know, but that's what happened, that later after Yontif, the Rebbe changed and the Rebbe started going on Monday. Another thing, in the year Tovshin Nun Beis, he came for Yud Shvat and he stayed through Chov Beis Shvat. And there was Yechidas Klolis, like it was always after Yud Shvat, and he took pictures. He was the last one to get the dollar from the Rebbe. And when he got his dollar, he tells the Rebbe that the Rebbe should watch his health, should be careful with his health. And he said to the Rebbe, Midarf a gesunden Rebbe. We need a healthy Rebbe. So the Rebbe said to him, Adank. And he added, Und nicht darf horben gesunde Chassidim. He said, thank you. And then the Rebbe added, and I need healthy Chassidim. And he really felt uncomfortable at that time, he said, when the Rebbe said that. And the truth was, this was Tovshin Nun Beis, that not long after the Rebbe had the stroke, he also had a stroke. And he actually said that year, he said, after this happened, before when he left, when he was here, when he got the dal, and the Rebbe told him, he said to my brother Gabriel, I'm afraid that this is my last time I'm here. And that's the truth, like he had a stroke not long after the Rebbe, and then later, eventually, he passed away. But he had that feeling. But this is what the Rebbe said to him. When he said to the Rebbe that the Rebbe darf a gesunden Rebbe, the Rebbe said to him, und nicht darf haben gesunde Chassidim. It was Erev Yom Kippur, or Tovshin Mem Dalet, or Tovshin Mem Hey. And the Rebbe came to Shachris, The Rebbe gave nickels to the kids, like he would do many times when he'd come into daven. He would give nickels to the children to put into a tzedakah box. And he was there taking pictures. And when the Rebbe finished with the kids, the Rebbe gave him also a nickel. And the Rebbe said to him with a smile, "As on them built from the nickel, take a picture of the nickel." Right after davening, after Shachris, he ran home right away, didn't eat anything. He rushed to Manhattan. Remember, it's Erev Yom Kippur. He didn't eat anything. He rushed to Manhattan, went to B&H, bought a special lens that he should be able to take a picture of the nickel, and he didn't eat yet. He took a picture of the nickel, rushed to Borough Park to develop the negative. Those years, you had to have, it was a negative, you had to develop the negative, and it would take time, but he rushed and had the negative developed, and he had a picture of the nickel. And he rushed back and he came to 770 before Mincha. After Mincha, he took the picture, got close, walked over to the Rebbe, and told the Rebbe, "I did the rotzen of the Rebbe." And he gave the Rebbe the picture of the nickel. The Rebbe looked at him pretty serious and told him, "Agut yor." Now we don't know what was behind all this, but we do see the way a chassid, the Rebbe says a word, it sounds like the Rebbe made like a shtickle joke or something, but there's no jokes by the Rebbe. If he said it, there must be something there in what he did, and he ran and did it and didn't even eat anything yet, and ran to make sure that by Mincha he should be able to bring the picture of the nickel to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe took it very serious, the Rebbe looked at him very seriously, and the Rebbe told him, "Agut yor." Rebbe Yitzchak Freidin used to speak to the Rebbe in a very open, friendly way, kiviyachol. And the Rebbe would speak to him the same way. So once he said to the Rebbe that he hopes that he's not bothering the Rebbe by taking all these pictures and always being in the Rebbe's face. So the Rebbe answered him, "Zal zayin behatzlocha rabba," should be with a lot of success. But he added, "Aber on hasagas gvul," there should not be any hasagas gvul, which means that he should make sure that this doesn't take away any parnos, I guess, from anybody else, etc. And actually, that's what he did. Another time, he was standing outside, and it must have been cool, and he was standing without a coat. And the Rebbe saw him. So the Rebbe says to him, "Do is nit Eretz Yisrael." This is not Eretz Yisrael. In other words, in Eretz Yisrael, maybe the seder there is that people do go without coats, or maybe it's because it's not so cold, or whatever it is. I don't know what the reason is. But Lapel, the Rebbe said to him, "Do is nit Eretz Yisrael." Here it's not Eretz Yisrael, and therefore make sure to wear a coat. The first years that Rebbe Leibel Yitzchak Freidin came to the Rebbe, he did not have a beard. And later he grew a beard. And he said it wasn't easy for him to grow a beard. Some people have a hard time having a beard, and it was a problem with his family, and also the neighbors that he had in the city where he lived in Cholon. It wasn't easy for him to grow a beard. But nevertheless, he grew the beard. And the first time he came to the Rebbe, when he had already a beard, he was sure the Rebbe would acknowledge it. The Rebbe would make a certain comment about his beard. He came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe didn't say a word, didn't say anything, didn't mention it, didn't comment on it. The whole month of Tishrei, the Rebbe didn't say anything. He felt very bad. He gave some brach, and he was broken by himself. He thought that he did such a great thing, and to him it was basically a Mesiras Nefesh to do this. And the Rebbe didn't even comment on it. So he felt bad. The next year when he came, and the Rebbe saw him, so the Rebbe made with his hands like over the face, like showing him about the beard. And then the Rebbe said to him, "Yasher Kayach." The Rebbe thanked him for growing the beard. And he said later that I see the words that he used, how smart the Rebbe is. The first time that he came and he had the beard, even though he grew the beard, he really wasn't sure he's going to keep the beard. Because since it was very hard for him, it said all the inyonim, so it was very possible that he would have cut off the beard later and not have the beard. It's only when he came the second year, by then already it was established and it was sure to have a beard. So he says he understands why the Rebbe waited. In the beginning he didn't say anything because the Rebbe knew it's not so poshut. But the second year when he came, a second time with the beard, that's when the Rebbe acknowledged it, and the Rebbe said Yasher Keach, and he was very, very happy. In the Farbrengen of Shabbos Parshas Vayechi, Tovshin Lamed, the Rebbe spoke about Menashe and Ephraim, and explained that this represents two drachim, two ways in Avodas Hashem in Zman HaGolus. And he connected it to the name Menashe and to the name Ephraim, etc., etc. Very gishmak siche, and it became actually a very famous siche. This siche was mugeh, and printed twice. Once in the Hisofis to Chelik Hey, Bekitzer, and then it is also the regular Sikha in Chelik Tesvav. In the Hisofis to Chelik Hey, it's in page 459, and I think it's only since the second edition of Chelik Hey. In the first edition it wasn't there. And then also as a regular Sikha in Chelik Tesvav, page 432. Now the question is, why was it first printed one way? In other words, it's in one place, Bekitzer, and then another place with changes and more Hisofis, etc., etc. Now the truth is, this is not the only place this happened. And I'm not talking about a Sikha that was not Mugge and later was printed Mugge. The Sikhas that were Mugge and were printed in a certain place, wherever any Sefer or as a liquid, as a Kuntris came out, and that same Sikha was Mugge again with changes and Hisofis, or we could call it the Madura Basra second one. And we find this in different places. I'll give just a few examples. For instance, the Sikha of Vayera, Parshas Vayera, Tovshin Chav Hei, is printed in the Hisofis of Chelik Hei. Look at the Sikhas. But one of the Sikhas in the Sefer itself, not in the Hisofis, to Parshas Vayera, is also the same Sikha, more bariches, more long, with a lot of additional things. We know the famous Sikha of Kom Rabbi Shochter Reb Zeire. It's printed in the Hisofis to Chelik Chav Zayin, page 267. But it's also in Likud Sichas Chelik Lamed Aleph, the second Sikha to Purim. There's a beer of the Rebbe concerning Sfiras Eimer, the Madregas of Tmimes, different levels. So it's printed first in Sefer HaSichas Tovshin Nun Aleph, page 447, but it's in Chelik Lamed Ches and Likud Sichas to Chag HaShavuos, with more Hisofis and changes. So the truth is, the way it worked was that sometimes, for whatever reason, the Rebbe was Magia as Sikha, but then later on, for Likutei Sichas, that same Sikha was written up again with a Sofas based on what the Rebbe said other times, and other things, maybe Zetlav that the Rebbe wrote, so it was printed twice. So the fact that the first time the Rebbe was Magia, it stayed, and it's printed in different places, and because later the Rebbe was Magia for Likutei Sichas, it came into its place in Likutei Sichas. The same thing here with this Sikha. What happened with this Sikha, B'negei Ephraim and Menashe, was the first time it was printed was in the Yiddish Heim. There used to be a journal that was given out by Sheikh Abad. They used to come out a few times a year, which was called the Yiddish Heim. It had the Yiddish section in Yiddish and had a English section. In the Yiddish section, always there was a Sikha printed from the Rebbe. That Sikha was usually written, always written, by Reb Heshke Dubravsky. He was a big writer, and he wrote a lot for the Yiddish Heim. So he used to write up the Sikha, and it would be given into the Rebbe to be Magia. B'chlal, the beginning, the Rebbe was always Magia, the whole section of Yiddish section of all the other articles too, but certainly of the Sikha. So he would give in a Sikha for the Rebbe to be Magia, and the Rebbe was Magia, and that's how it was printed in the Yiddish Heim. But since that Sikha was Mugia, so it belonged someplace in one of the Svarim of the Rebbe. So it was put in to a place of a Sofa in one of the Svarim, and this one was put into a Sofa of Likutei Sichas Chelik Hei. But that same Sikha was written up longer, which more details that the Rebbe said, and more explanation and different things that was added by the Rebbe, and that was put as one of the Likutim for Likutei Sichas, as a Likut for the Parsha of the week. And that was the Likut for the Likutei Sichas, which later came out in Chelik Tesvav. That's why we have both. We have it Bekitzer, the way it was Rebbe Magia to the Yiddish Heim, and that was written by, as I said, specifically by Reb Heshke Dubravsky, who Bechlal was the one that was Mesagnan the Sichas for Likutei Sichas always. He was the one that made the grammar and the Sichas, because he was a Gewaldike writer, and he had the biggest chush, and the Rebbe liked the way he wrote. The Rebbe even once wrote on one of the Hanochas, he wrote in, gave into the Rebbe to be Magia. The Rebbe wrote that I never saw such a good Hanocha written, and he was one that's Mesagnan Likutei Sichas. So here, for the Yiddish Heim, he also used to write. So the one in Chelik, Hisofis Chelik Hei, is the one that he wrote for Yiddish Heim, and later was printed because it was Mugeh. And then this is also a likud that was made, that was printed in Chelik Tesvav, page 432. In Likutei Sichas Chelik Yud, Parshas Neyach, the third Sikha, page 35, the Rebbe brings rayas that according to Rashi, the water of the Mabul was not boiling, was not reischin. And then the Rebbe says, what's the reason of Rashi? So you could say, number one, Aleph, Ein hechrech b'pshuta shel mikra lehesiv nes shoyim mayim reischim. There's no hechrech, there's no reason in pshat, there's nothing forcing us in simple pshat to add psanun nes, which is not written, that it was boiling water. And the second thing he says, beis, because al pshuta shel mikra, in simple pshat, eich neskayma hateva b'mayim reischim. How could the teva, the ark, survive in boiling water? So in derech pshat, probably it wasn't. But the Fabrengen, when the Rebbe said the Sikha, which was Shabbos Parshas Noach Tovshin Lamed Daled, so there the Rebbe brought another ayah, that since the Yena brought the leaf, the olive leaf, a leaf from the olive tree, and where did it come from? From a tree that must have survived the mabul. If it would have been boiling water, it wouldn't have survived the mabul. That's what the Rebbe mentioned. When this was written in the Sikha here, the Rebbe crossed it out. Now everyone has to learn his own pshat. Why did Rebbe cross it out? That this is seemingly not a raya. Then another thing. In the Ha'ora it says, "B'tzorichi mepirish Rashi." The Rebbe asks a kasha, and what he says that according to Rashi it wasn't boiling. He has a kasha from Rashi, which Rashi says when they made the teva from Atze Gefer. So Rashi says the word Gefer is al shem gofris, is because of the word gofris. Gofris means sulfur, and it's from the same word as Gefer, as the name of the tree, the wood that the teva was made. And Rashi says shenigzur aleim li machas beis, because of gofris, that the teva, the mabul was, the gzeir of the mabul was that they would be wiped out with it, with gofris. So l'chura, from this Rashi, we see that it was reischin, because gofri means it was hot, it was sulfur, which sulfur makes fire. So l'chura, from there is a raya that against what the Rebbe says, and the Rebbe says v'tzorich iyun. The truth is, this question from this Rashi was asked by the Rebbe when the Sikha was given in. The Sikha was given in with this thing that the Rebbe says that according to Rashi it wasn't hot. The question was asked by the Rebbe. And then it was written to the Rebbe, maybe the pshat is that Chatchila the Gzeire was, when the Rebbe told him to make the teva, the Gzeire was that it should be Reischin, and that's why he said Atze Gefer al Shem Gofris. But Lepel Mamish the Rebbe changed for the good and took off that part of the Reischin. This part also the Rebbe crossed out. This whole thing the Rebbe crossed out is trying to give this answer. The Rebbe crossed it out, and all the Rebbe left was, he wrote B'tzorechiyun. When there was a question asked from Rashi, the Rebbe wrote Tzorechiyun mepirish Rashi. The Rebbe also added the words Urei pirish Rashi vayera yuteschav daled, but he left it as a kasha, and obviously didn't accept the answer that was tried to be given to the Rebbe, that the reason is that what it really means is that originally it was supposed to be Reischin. That's why it was originally Mitzad Gofris. But L'Pel Mamish, the Rebbe changed for the better. The Rebbe didn't accept that answer, and he left it open as a kasher. In Lekutei Sichos Chelik Vav, we find a strange thing. At the end of the Sefer, after the Heisofes on the Sefer, there's a separate sharblat which says the word Heisofe, and after that is printed a Heisofe, and it says L'Sicha Ha'alev the Parsha Shmeis. This is Heisofe to the first Sicha of Parsha Shmeis in this volume, and there's a star there, and it says it's from the Sichas Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Chav Tes, which is a beer to the Sicha, the first Sicha in Lekutei Sichos Chelik Vav of Parsha Shmeis, and then it says Hanoche Bilti Mugas. It's a Hanoche, not Mugeh. So it's a strange thing that here we have a Sofer to that Sikha. It's a separate Sofer. It's not part of the rest of the Sofers. And plus, it's Hanocha Bilti Mugi. It's not Mugi from the Rebbe. Where do we find in the Lekutei Sichos printed a Sikha which is Hanocha Bilti Mugi? As far as I remember, I think this is the only place where we have Hanocha Bilti Mugi in Lekutei Sichos. What is the inyan behind it? There must be something behind this. So let me explain what happened. In the year Tovshin Chav Tes, the Rebbe was not Magia weekly Sichos. Just because of certain reasons, as I think I explained once, a few times during the year, the Rebbe was Magia special Sikha. One of the Shabbosim was Shabbos Parsha Shmeis Tovshin Chav Tes. The Rebbe was Magia a special likud for that Shabbos. And the likud was a Sikha from Tovshin Chav Hei. And in that Sikha it said that when it comes to giving a kiss, you only could give a kiss to somebody when the person feels it, like he's not asleep, when he's awake. Versus when you speak about a person and call him and mention his name, which also shows love, that could be done even if the person doesn't feel it, is not around, he could be far. But the kiss you have to give when he feels. That's what it says in the Sikha. So after that Sikha came out, after Shabbos, a question was asked by the Rebbe, that according to what the Rebbe says there, that when there's no such thing as giving a kiss when the person is asleep or he's not aware of it. So we find a sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe where he says that when he was a little baby and was laying in his crib, his father had the desire to give him a kiss. But instead of a kiss, he wrote a maimer and gave it to him later. So here we see that there is such a thing as giving a kiss when the person doesn't feel it because he's a little tiny baby. And he was asleep, I think, in the crib. So the Rebbe answered that there we're talking about wanting to give a kiss. Wanting to give a kiss is one thing, but giving a kiss is a different thing. So Shabbos Bafabreng and Shabbos Parshas Ve'era Tovshin Chavtez, the Rebbe spoke about it. And he said that they asked the Shaila from the Favor from the Sicha, some Sicha from the Rebbe, from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Vimi frekt azay antwortman. You asked from there, I answered from there. But really the Kasha is from a clear posik. The posik says that after Yankov Avinu passed away, it says Yosef kissed him. So here we see for sure that it's possible to kiss even if he isn't feeling, is not aware because he had passed away. And the Rebbe went into the whole thing to answer al Chassidus that there is two levels in the union of neshike and kissing, and one is shayches only if the person feels it and is aware, the other one is not shayches. He calls it neshiking kfulin, as it says in Chassidus, a double type of neshik, etc., etc. Now, when this likud of Tovshin Chavtes Parsha Shmeis went into a sefer, because after the next year, Lamed and Lamed Aleph, on these 2 years, where the Rebbe was Magia weekly Sicha, so it turned into the Sforim. So Chumash Shmeis was Chelik Vov. So the Sicha from Tovshin Chavtes, that likud also went in. So you have 3 Sichas to Parsha Shmeis. So when it was the sefer was printed, there was a svara to say that since this Sicha is very important to explain something that it says in the likud, that likud which is printed in the first Sicha of Chelik Vov, so it's important to get this beer because people will learn the Sikha and they'll wonder, how does it say in the Sikha that it's not possible to give a kush, to give a kiss, when the person is not aware, when here by Yankov Avinu we see. So this Vora came up to ask the Rebbe to be Magia the Sikha, to prepare the Sikha, the way you prepare a Sikha, not for a likud, but especially for the Sefer, to prepare this Sikha in asking this kasha and giving the teretz and giving it into the Rebbe should be magia, not as a likud, not to come out in any other form or shape, but just it should come at the end of the Sefer Chelik Vov. So this should be a beer on what it says in the first Sikha in Chelik Vov. The Sikha was prepared like a regular Sikha with the things that the Rebbe said, and it's something going on the bottom, something is going on top, and Uizgitaich things that the Rebbe said, like it was regularly prepared and was given into the Rebbe, and wrote to the Rebbe that we want to add this to the end of the Sefer Chelik Vov. The Rebbe answered, Ein Hazman Gromel Hagia, I don't have the time to be Magia, and therefore he wrote, Yachlitu ba'atzmon, you guys yourself decide whether you want to print it as is. And if I remember correctly, the Rebbe even added like a lotion that you should have, like siyata d'shmaya, you should have a schuz that you shouldn't make any mistake. Since he's not magia yet, he gave like a broch. I don't remember if he wrote schuz harabi misayayto or something like that, but he wrote something, and there was a whole discussion in the Vad by us whether we should actually put it in or not, because the Rebbe was not magia yet, and the Rebbe wrote Yachlitu ba'atzmon. You should decide yourself. The bottom line, we decided that since the Rebbe allowed it, he said, decide yourself, which means if you decide, it's okay. And the Rebbe also, I think, gave, like I said, a certain bracha that you should be mechavan to the truth. So we decided to put it in. And that's why this is not regular from the regular Isofas, another Sikha that goes into the Isofas, look at the Sikhas, any Sikha that's Mugya. That's not part of the series of Likutei Sichos, goes into the Isofas. Most of them. A few went into the original, in the first part of Likutei Sichos, but most didn't. But this is separate. This is a separate Isofa for itself, and it says that this is for the Sicha Alu to Parsha Shmeis, and this is from the Fabrengen the Parsha Ve'era Tovshin Chavtes, which is a beer to that Sicha, and we left it with the words Hanoch built in Megaz because it is not Mugya. But nevertheless, we hope that everything is Mechuven because the Rebbe said that if you decide yourself, and if you decide obviously, then print it as you gave it into the Rebbe, so it's printed as it's given into the Rebbe. So hopefully it's meduyik, because the Rebbe said, especially if the Rebbe, I think, gave a certain bracha that you should be mechavan, so hopefully it was mechuvim, but we left it as a separate entity, so it's not printed anywhere, it wasn't a likud anywhere, it was given into the Rebbe, especially for this sefer as a separate thing at the end, and that's how it stayed, and that's how it's printed in Chelik Vov. In Likutei Sichos Chelik Vov, you find a strange thing. At the end of the Sefer, after the Heisofes on the Sefer, there's a separate sharblat which says the word Heisofe, and after that is printed a Heisofe, and it says L'sicha ha'alev the Parsha Shmeis. This is Heisofe to the first Sicha of Parsha Shmeis in this volume, and there's a star there, and it says it's from the Sichas Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Chav Tes, which is a beer to the Sicha, the first Sicha in the Sichas Chelik Vov of Parshas Shmeis, and then it says Hanoche Bilti Mugas. It's a Hanoche, not Muge. So it's a strange thing that here we have a sofa to that Sicha. It's a separate sofa. It's not part of the rest of the sofas, and plus it's Hanoche Bilti Muge. It's not Muge from the Rebbe. Where do we find in the Sichas printed a Sicha which is Hanoche Bilti Muge? As far as I remember, I think this is the only place where we have Hanoche Bilti Muge in the Sichas. What is the inyan behind it? There must be something behind this. So let me explain what happened. In the year Tovshin Chav Tes, the Rebbe was not Magia weekly Sichas. Just because of certain reasons, as I think I explained once, a few times during the year, the Rebbe was Magia special Sicha. One of the Shabbosim was Shabbos Parsha Shmeis Tovshin Chav Tes. The Rebbe was Magia a special Likud for that Shabbos. And the Likud was a Sicha from Tovshin Chav Hei. And in that Sicha, it said that when it comes to giving a kiss, you only could give a kiss to somebody when the person feels it, like he's not asleep, when he's awake. Versus when you speak about a person and call him and mention his name, which also shows love, that could be done even if the person doesn't feel it, is not around, he could be far. But the kiss you have to give when he feels. That's what it says in the Sicha. So after that Sicha came out, after Shabbos, a question was asked by the Rebbe, that according to what the Rebbe says there, that when there's no such thing as giving a kiss when the person is asleep or he's not aware of it. So we find a Sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe where he says that when he was a little baby and was laying in his crib, his father had a desire to give him a kiss. But instead of a kiss, he wrote a maimer and gave it to him later. So here we see that there is such a thing as giving a kiss when the person doesn't feel it because he's a little tiny baby. And he was asleep, I think, in the crib. So the Rebbe answered that there we're talking about wanting to give a kiss. Wanting to give a kiss is one thing, but giving a kiss is a different thing. So Shabbos Bafabreng and Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tovshin Chav Tes, the Rebbe spoke about it. And he said that they asked the Shaila from the Favor from the Sicha, some Sicha from the Rebbe, from the Frierdiker Rebbe, Vimi frekt azay antwortman. You asked from there, I answered from there. But really the Kasha is from a clear posik. The posik says that after Yankov Avinu passed away, it says Yosef kissed him. So here we see for sure that it's possible to kiss even if he isn't feeling, he's not aware because he had passed away. And the Rebbe went into the whole thing to answer al Chassidus that there is two levels in the union of neshike and kissing, and one is shaychus only if the person feels it and is aware, the other one is not shaychus. He calls it neshiking kfulin, as it says in Chassidus, a double type of neshike, etc., etc. Now, when this likud of Tovshin Chav Tes Parsha Shmeis went into a sefer, because after the next year, Lamed and Lamed Aleph, when these 2 years where the Rebbe was Magia weekly Sicha, so it turned into the Sforim. So Chumash Shmeis was Chelik Vov. So the Sicha from Tovshin Chav Tes, that likud also went in. So you have 3 Sichas to Parsha Shmeis. So when it was the sefer was printed, there was a svara to say that since this Sicha is very important to explain something that it says in the likud, that likud which is printed in the first Sicha of Chelik Vov, so it's important to get this beer because people will learn the Sicha and they'll wonder, how does it say in the Sicha that it's not possible to give a kush, to give a kiss, when the person is not aware, when here by Yankov Avinu we see. So this svara came up to ask the Rebbe to be Magia the Sicha, to prepare the Sicha, the way you prepare a Sicha, not for a likud, but especially for the Sefer, to prepare this Sicha in asking this kasha and giving the teretz and giving it into the Rebbe should be Magia, not as a likud, not to come out in any other form or shape, but just it should come at the end of the Sefer Chelik Vov, so this should be a beer on what it says in the first Sicha in Chelik Vov. The Sicha was prepared like a regular Sicha with the things that the Rebbe said, and it's something going on the bottom, something is going on top, and Uizgitaich things that the Rebbe said, like it was regularly prepared and was given into the Rebbe and wrote to the Rebbe that we want to add this to the end of the Sefer Chelik Vov. The Rebbe answered, Ein Hazman Gromel Hagia, I don't have the time to be Magia, and therefore he wrote, Yachlitu ba'atzmon, you guys yourself decide whether you want to print it as is. And if I remember correctly, the Rebbe even added like a lotion that you should have, like Siyata Deshmaya, you should have a schus that you shouldn't make any mistake. Since he's not Magia yet, he gave like a broch. I don't remember if he wrote schus harabi misayaitom, something like that. But he wrote something, and there was a whole discussion in the Vad by us whether we should actually put it in or not, because the Rebbe was not Magia yet, and the Rebbe wrote Yachlitu ba'atzmon. You should decide yourself. The bottom line, we decided that since the Rebbe allowed it, he said, decide yourself, which means if you decide, it's okay. And the Rebbe also, I think, gave, like I said, a certain bracha that you should be mechavan to the truth. so we decided to put it in. And that's why this is not regular from the regular Isofas, another Sikha that goes into the Isofas, Likutei Sichos. Any Sikha that's Mugya, that's not part of the series of Likutei Sichos, goes into the Isofas. Most of them. A few went into the original, in the first part of Likutei Sichos, but most didn't. But this is separate. This is a separate Sofa for itself, and it says there, this is for the Sikha Alu to Parsha Shmeis, and this is from the Fabrengen of Parsha Vayra Tovshin Chavtes, which is a beer to that Sikha, and we left it with the words Hanoch built in Megaz because it is not Mugya. But nevertheless, we hope that everything is Mechuvim because the Rebbe said that if you decide yourself, and if you decide obviously, then print it as you gave it into the Rebbe, so it's printed as it's given into the Rebbe, so hopefully it's Meduyik. Because the Rebbe said, especially if the Rebbe, I think, gave a certain bracha that you should be mechavan, so hopefully it was mechuvim, but we left it as a separate entity, so it's not printed anywhere, it wasn't a likud anywhere, it was given into the Rebbe, especially for this sefer as a separate thing at the end, and that's how it stayed, and that's how it's printed in Chelik Vov. When my brother-in-law, Rebbe Yankel Lieberman, who was one of the shluchim of the Rebbe Teretz Yisrael, when he got married, it was in Paris. At that time, his brother, my other brother-in-law, Reb Chaim Meir, was a shliach in South Africa. And he would like to come to the chassan of his brother. So he asked the Rebbe if he could come, and the Rebbe answered, HaTorah chasso al mameinim shel Yisrael. That the Torah is worried, cares about money of Yidden. In other words, it's cost a lot of money, and he shouldn't come. When my in-laws went into Yechidus before the chassanah, my father-in-law was planning to ask the Rebbe the question again whether his son Chaim Meir could come to the chasana, his son and the family, etc., etc. Before he went in, Rabbi Groner tells him, you cannot write anything in the zettel, b'chlal, only thing is asking for a bracha for the chasana. So he wrote in the zettel, he's asking a bracha for the chasana, but he also wrote, he's asking the Rebbe permission to ask a question. So when we went into Yechidus, the first thing the Rebbe said, he turned around to my mother-in-law, and he said to her, Ich habe akumen brief von einer Mame. I received a letter from your mother that she was complaining why the Rebbe sent her grandson such a far place to South Africa. So the Rebbe said, I hope that your mother is not upset on what I did in sending your son to such a far place. So my mother answered, Avada, she doesn't have faribel. Not only that, she regrets she even wrote the letter. She feels bad that she wrote that letter. And then the Rebbe gave him the bracha for the chasaneh. And the Rebbe did not react to this line that my father-in-law wrote, that he's asking permission to ask a question. So when he saw that the Rebbe didn't react to it, he says to the Rebbe, can I ask a question? The Rebbe understood what his question is going to be, that it's going to be about his son coming to the chasana. So the Rebbe right away said, I already answered him. So my father-in-law said in a lotion of a joke, trying to start the conversation, he said, the Rebbe wrote that HaTorah chas al mameinim shel Yisrael. So that's Yisrael. Ich bin doch a Levi, I'm a Levi. So it doesn't apply to me. So the Rebbe smiled. And then the Rebbe said to him, I didn't know that it really bothers you. You really, really want it so much. And especially, I don't want that your mother-in-law, which means my shviger's mother, your mother-in-law, should be upset. Now, the Rebbe Bechlal had a special yachas to her, as I mentioned in one of the previous voice notes, and the Rebbe once wrote to me about her, Ziotos kosher verdient. In Yiddish, the Rebbe wrote that she deserved it 100%. So the Rebbe had a special yachas. So the Rebbe did not want that she should be upset. So the Rebbe said, I didn't know it's negayah to you so much, and especially I don't want that your mother-in-law should be upset. So therefore, he said to him, if you will give the same amount of money that it'll cost to bring him to Tzedakah with a hisofa, with an addition of 10%, then he could come. And the Bifrad, the Rebbe repeated again that I don't want your mother-in-law to be upset. It is known that there is an inyan to have a silk lining in the talis. When you have inside the talis, you have the lining there. So it's an inyan to have it to be made of zayd, made of silk. Now, before I got married and I was preparing to get my talis, Tovshin Lamed Aleph, I went over to Rav Leibel Groner and asked him if he heard from the Rebbe anything about it. Did the Rebbe say it, or did the Rebbe give a reason why? So he told me that before he got married, he asked the Rebbe, And the Rebbe told him, yes, he should get a silk lining to the talis. And the Rebbe gave him 3 reasons why. He says 2 reasons he remembered then, and the 3rd reason he said he didn't remember. Already in Tovshin Lamed Aleph, he said he didn't remember the 3rd reason. But the first 2 reasons were, number 1, because that's what the Friediger Rebbe had. He said the Shveret had that. The Shveret had a silk lining, we may, let's say, you have a lining. And the second thing he said, that when you have a silk lining, the talis constantly falls off. And constantly you have to fix it. So this is one of the things that remind you constantly that you're wearing a talis and you're doing the mitzvah of tzitzis. So that's another reason why you should have silk. So you should always be in your mind to remember that you're wearing a talis. And the 3rd reason, he said, even then, already he didn't remember. In the beginning of Chedesh Nisan Tovshin Chov Hei, the Rebbe gave out a hero that he should print Hilchas Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe in a separate kuntras. Originally, Hilchas Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe was printed in the lifetime of the Alter Rebbe still as a separate kuntras before the rest of the Shulchan Aruch. The rest of the Shulchan Aruch was printed after the Alter Rebbe was installed, but Hilchas Talmud Torah was printed before in a separate kuntras. And later on, it became part of the Shulchan Aruch. So together in the chelik of Yeredeya, they have this Hilchas Talmud Torah also. But the Rebbe here said that they should print it again in a separate kuntras, and it was printed not a photostat of the prints from before, but it was a new typeset with ha'oris. So it was something very new, and the Rebbe wanted that people should start learning Hilchas Talmud Torah, and made a whole shturim about learning Hilchas Talmud Torah. And by the Farbrengen of Yud Beis Tammuz that year, in quite a few sichas, the Rebbe spoke about Hilchas Talmud Torah of the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe explained that just like the first time it was printed in a kuntras for itself, there it didn't have the Alter Rebbe's name, but this helped a lot that he didn't know who it was who wrote it, and later they found out it was the Alter Rebbe who wrote it. That helped in weakening the snags that they had. And then they started printing it, the Rebbe said, together with the Shulchan Aruch. But now the Rebbe said he had it printed again in a separate kuntras. And the reason for that is, the Rebbe said, because this is something very special. The signon of Hilchas Talmud Torah is not like the signon of Shulchan Aruch, of the Mechaber. It's not even like the signon of the Rambam. It's even different than the signon of the Alter Rebbe himself in Hilchas Talmud Torah, which is a small chelik in the Eirach. This is completely different. And therefore, the Rebbe said by printing it in a separate kuntras is going to help that it'll be easier to take it along and take it in a place where you can bring the whole Shulchan Aruch. And the Rebbe also mentioned that the beginning of Afotzes Hamayones started with Hilchas Talmud Torah. That Hilchas Talmud Torah made such an impression that this helped in Afotzes Hamayones. And the Rebbe also explained that what happened then is that this helped to gain for Chassidus, Hafotzes Hamayones, because it's Nigla. And the Seder was that first you start with Nigla and then you're able to help a person through the union of Chassidus. So this is how the Alter Rebbe did it, and from that the hero is that everybody should also do that way, that you should start with Nigla and then you could able to go ahead with Chassidus. But the bottom line was that the Rebbe had it printed separately with a new typeset, which is different than, because the Shulchan Aruch, when it was reprinted, it was all the same copy of the Shulchan Aruch before. But Hilchas Talmud Torah separately was printed, and later on, after that, when they reprinted the whole Shulchan Aruch, the Hilchas Talmud Torah was a copy, was offset of the new print of Hilchas Talmud Torah, which means that even though the rest of the Shulchan Aruch was the old print, but Hilchas Talmud Torah was the new print. And the Rebbe then, we saw, really wanted that people should learn Hilchas Talmud Torah. It's known that by a chasana, 1 Sheva Broches is made in the yeshiva. So I want to mention that the Rebbe said this to my father in Yechidus. When my sister got married, they lived in Cleveland, so the chasana was in Cleveland, and then there were Sheva Broches there, but the Rebbe told my father on Yechidus before to make sure that there should be a Sheva Broches in yeshiva. And because of that, the plan was changed. They were supposed to stay for all Sheva Broches in Cleveland, and then stay a little later after that, but they changed the plan and they came back to New York in the middle of the Sheva Brachas in order to be able to fulfill what the Rebbe said, to make 1 Sheva Brachas in yeshiva. And later on, when my brother got married, my brother Shalom Ber got married, the Rebbe also said to make sure that they have one Sheva Brachas in Yeshiva. And I think the Rebbe even chazed it over again. And don't forget, make sure that there will be one Sheva Brachas in Yeshiva. And actually, there was a Sheva Brachas in Yeshiva in 770. But this all shows how important it was by the Rebbe that there should be a Sheva Brachas in Yeshiva. Someone told me that 30 years ago he was on a flight to Eretz Yisrael, and next to him was sitting another Yid. The one that told me was not a Lubavitcher, and the one that was sitting next to him was also not a Lubavitcher. But he told me, since it's such a long flight, obviously 2 Yidden sit next to each other to get into a conversation. So the other person tells him, I want to tell you something about the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And this is what he said. My grandfather, this person says, my grandfather learned in Berlin in the university at the same time as the Rebbe did. And they had something like, from time to time, some of the people there, the Fruma people, would get together. They would eat together, or they would eat and then later sit together. I don't know exactly, he didn't say exactly how it was, but they would get together by a meal or after a meal, and when it come to bench, they would take turns. Each time, someone else would be the one to be mezamen, to say Rabbi Semevel and bench and do the zimun. Every time there was somebody else. From time to time, when it came the turn of the Rebbe, who was then the Edim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, his turn to bench. So sometimes he would say an excuse that I have a stomachache, I couldn't eat, I didn't wash, I didn't do this, all kinds of excuses, many times. And they figured out that this is whenever his turn came out to be the mezamen on a Monday or on a Thursday, he always found these excuses and would not bench. So they realized that he didn't eat. And they figured it out, and what they saw later, that every Monday and Thursday, he would fast. And this man tells this guy who's telling me the story, he says, you see, we're talking about the Lubavitcher Rebbe while he was learning in the university, which Kiviyachol, it was like a college student. And his Avedas Hashem was so great then that every Monday and Thursday, he would fast, like it says that tzaddikim would fast, from time to time, or different dates, etc., etc. The Rebbe would fast then. In the second Sikh of Parsha Yisrael, look at the Sichas Chelik Yud Aleph, the Rebbe is masbir. Why is it that on Shabbos, midaraisa is only osir a maise, to do a malacha, but to speak divrei chayil, weekday things, is not osir midaraisa, but it is osir midarabonon. Machshove, to think divrei chayil, weekday things, is not even osir midarabonon. Only it comes out from Shulchan Aruch that misad midas Chassidus, someone who is in higher madrege, would not even think in his mind on Shabbos divrei chayil. And his masbir, the reason is, because the whole reason why we have to refrain from working on Shabbos is because Hashem stopped creating the world on Shabbos. So therefore, since it comes because Hashem created the world and stopped on Shabbos, so we also have to stop from creating, from making something. And that's Maisa. But not from Dibur. Hagam, the Eibishter, created the world through Dibur, through speech. And the Eibishter, when we say on Shabbos, he stopped the creation, means he stopped from the Dibur, so we should also be Osir on Dibur. But the Rebbe explains, because our Dibur is not like Hashem's Dibur. Hashem's Dibur made a Maise, made a creation. Our Dibur can't do that. And therefore, our Dibur is not Osir. On the other hand, since it's possible sometimes that Dibur should cause a Maise to come out later out of it, therefore, with the Rabbanon, that's also Osir. But Machshove, which cannot even cause anything to happen, so Machshove, to think Divrei Chayil on Shabbos is mutter even with the Rabbanon. And based on this, the Rebbe explains different Lashonos in the end of Shara Yichud V'Amun, at the end of Tanya. That the Alter Rebbe, through these words, is trying to explain to us why Maise is Osir, why Dibur is also Osir, and he's also explaining why Machshove is not Osir. Because Machshove is Take not Osir, only Misad Midas Chassidus it shouldn't be, but Be'etzem it's not Osir. When this Sikha was given into the Rebbe to be Magia, a question was asked. And even though the Rebbe explains here that the Alter Rebbe is trying to teach us why Machshove is not Osir, but maybe the question was asked, because Midas Chassidus, you should refrain from Machshove of worldly things, of weekday things. Maybe the Alter Rebbe does hint it in even the end of Tanya. Because the Alter Rebbe mentions there, at the end of Tanya, he says the Loshen that there is the inyan of Pnimius HaShabbos, and that is the Kavone B'Tfilas HaShabbos u'Betalmud Torah L'Dofka B'Hashem Echad. That the Pnimius of Shabbos is the Kavone in Tefillah and in Torah, etc., etc. So by writing these words that the Pnimis of Shabbos is the union of Kavona, and Kavona is Machshava, maybe the Alter Rebbe at least is hinting that there is an inyan in Shabbos of refraining from bad Machshava, from Machshava of Divrei Chayil, and it should be only in Tefillah, etc., etc. So maybe the Alter Rebbe does hint to that. So when they wrote this question to the Rebbe, all the Rebbe did was he crossed out this whole paragraph. This whole paragraph, which said maybe this is the pshat, that in these words that the Alter Rebbe says, "Hi, this is the Pnimis HaShabbos is kavone b'tfilas HaShabbos b'talmud Torah dafka b'yizbarach," is the hint to the Isser or that inyan that you should not have machshava, even machshava on Shabbos, which is not inyanim of kedusha but divrei chayil. So this may be hinted in these words the Rebbe crossed out. Now we don't know the Rebbe crossed out because it's not really true. This cannot be the hint, or maybe because this is not enough. There has to be more beer. Maybe the Rebbe crossed out, didn't want to get into it, etc., etc. But the fact is that the Rebbe crossed out this nakuda that the Alter Rebbe hints the union of machshove on Shabbos. I want to mention that what I said before, Shara Yichad V'Munah, it was a slip of the tongue, Plate Saloshin, I meant Kuntris Achren. I want to mention that what I said before, Shara Yichad V'Munah, it was a slip of the tongue, it was a Plate Saloshin, I meant Kuntris Achren and Tanya. We know that the Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur, before Shemon Esrei of Ma'ariv, after Hashkivenu, these words, that you are not allowed to be mafsik to announce Ya'aleh V'Yoveh the night of Rosh Chodesh, because some places what they do is that after Hashkivenu, before Shemon Esrei, the night of Rosh Chodesh, someone announces Ya'aleh V'Yoveh to remind everybody that you're supposed to say Ya'aleh V'Yoveh. But the Alter Rebbe paskins that you should not do that. Nevertheless, the meaning by us is that the Gabbai gives a patch on the bimeh, a patch on the table, and that patch reminds everybody that you're supposed to say Ya'aleh V'Yoveh. So I remember a few times that happened that they did not give that patch, that bang on the table, because usually they would. But a few times I remember throughout the years that they didn't, and I remember a few times that the Rebbe would not start Shemon Esrei. Sometimes I remember before he went back, he turned to the bimeh to wait, someone should give a patch, and then everyone realized and someone gave this bang on the table. I remember even it happened once that he already went back going back in order to start Shemon Esrei. So he went back the 3 steps, and then he stopped and he looked around, looked at the bimeh to see that people should give a bang. In other words, he didn't start Shemon Esrei till they gave the bang on the table. In other words, by the Rebbe, it was very important to give the bang on the table to remind everybody that you're supposed to say Ya'aleh V'Yoveh. In Lekutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Aleph, the 3rd Sicha to Parsha Pekudei, page 186, the Rebbe talks about the union of shlichus. And the Rebbe explains that there could be a certain taina that a person might have why he doesn't want to go on shlichus. So I want to read the way it was written lechatchila based on what the Rebbe said by this Fabrengen, where the Sicha is from, which is Parsha Shmini Tovshin Chov Hei, and what the Rebbe changed, and the way it's written in Lekutei Sichos now, in this page 186, in Chelik Yud Aleph. It was written like this: Kasher meirim linseya v'lasik ba'afotzes hamayonis chutza b'shlichus nisi hador. When you tell somebody, when you tell them, I guess it means that the Rebbe tells them, Kasher meirim, you tell to go and to get involved in afotzes hamayonis chutza, in the shlichus of the nosi hador. Yitochen hadover shemishahu yachshev shelifi matzovei behave einei roa zu shayches elov. Person might think, according to the situation now, this hero is not shayches to him. Betaina, he might taina like this: Kimisho chosid Chabad, since he is a Chabad chosid. But Chassidus Chabad harei ein leistapik b'munah. According to Chassidus Chabad, you can't be satisfied just with a munah. You have to horave, you have to work hard in everything. Still he understands and is ogulate by him in his mind of pnimius. What gain will there be if he goes with the shlichus of the Rebbe of the Nosi? And he'll get involved in the fotzes hamayonis chutza. When all the whole union of hafotzes hamayonis and the shlichus is by him only in a superficial way. He still doesn't understand it in his mind. Therefore, according to his opinion, first he's going to learn and be mizbeinen, contemplating yonim of Chassidus. And with time passing, when it will be understood and obligate in his mind that you have to get involved in the Fotzes HaMayonis, Azai Yekayim, the Yemales HaShlichas Beifim Pnimi. Then he's going to be Mekayim and fulfill the Shlichas in Eifim Pnimi. Now the Rebbe changed quite a few things here. First of all, instead of saying Kasher Meirim, when we tell somebody, we say Hero to go on Fotzes HaMayonis, B'Shlichas Nos Yador, the Rebbe crossed it out, and the Rebbe just wrote Kasher Matziyim Shlichas. When you're Matziyah, you offer a Shlichas to go travel and to get involved in a Fotzes HaMayonis. It's possible a person might think that the way it's now, it's not Shaychas Dim. This Steiner. So instead of writing the way it was written before, and that's the way it seemed from the Fabrengen, the way it's written before, that's more or less what the Rebbe said by Fabrengen, that the guy Kotaina, since he's a Chosid Chabad, now Pisidis Chabad, it's not enough for Munan, you have to Horev and you have to get involved. The Rebbe changed it. The Rebbe didn't cross out the words that Kotaina is a Chosid Chabad and not Pisidis, you have to Horev. He wrote like this. He Kotaina like this. Since you're part of the smart nation, therefore he has to behave in such a way to be mizbeinen in everything. I think should be in the pnimius. So the Rebbe took out this idea that he might taina because he's a Chosid Chabad, he doesn't want to go. He just said because he belongs to a smart nation, as the Pasuk says, and the Mele, he wants to understand everything. And the whole line where it seemed to be saying that therefore a person kotaine, what gain will there be if he goes on the shlichus when it's only by makiv? The Rebbe crossed out the whole line, and the Rebbe just left the words or by matzav aheva he wrote, and in this matzav the way he is, the shlichus lahafitz menos chutze is only by b'chinas makiv. And he doesn't understand the B'pnimius. And therefore, the Rebbe left these words. He's first going to harave, and the way it was written before, he's going to harave in learning and his boneness of Chassidus. The Rebbe changed that. And the Rebbe wrote he's going to harave in learning Torah B'chlal, and in Limud HaMayones v'Teres Chassidus Bifrat. And b'meshach hazman, when he's going to understand it, then he'll get involved in Afotzes HaMayones. But the way it was written before was that then he's going to be Mekayim and fulfill the Shlichus. The Rebbe changed it and wrote, then the person might say he's going to be mekabel al atzma, he will accept upon himself the shlichus, and he will be mekayim et be'ifim pnimi. So there are different words that the Rebbe made point of mentioning. Natayne is not because it's Chosid Chabad. The Rebbe took out the word, they tell him to go on shlichus, but they're matziyah to go on shlichus. And his taine that his shlichus is not worth anything because he's not in pnimi, is that taine the Rebbe took out. That's not a taine. That's not even what the person might taine. And when the person was written that a person says that he's going to first learn Chassidus and Mizbein Chassidus, the Rebbe wrote that first he's going to learn Torah B'chlal, that's what the Taina is, and Chassidus Bifrat. And then, instead of the way it said before, then he's going to be Mekayim the Shlichus, then he will be Mekabel upon himself the Shlichus and be Mekayim it.
I heard from Rabbi Yoel that he once spoke to Reb Nissim Mindel, who was the Rebbe's secretary, and he would write the letters for the Rebbe, English letters and many of the Hebrew letters. Also, he would write for the Rebbe. The Rebbe would dictate it, and then he would write it. And Bechlal, he would write English things like articles that he would write for Lubavitch and write for the Rebbe. And the Rebbe would look it over and make a lot of changes. Sometimes the changes that the Rebbe made, he would take one word and change it into a different word. He didn't really understand what difference does it make. But he didn't ask. But one time, on one of the changes that the Rebbe made in a different word, he couldn't understand what the change means. Why does the Rebbe care to make the change? So he asked the Rebbe. And the Rebbe explained to him, Bariches, the difference between this word and that word, and that's why the word that the Rebbe changed is the right word that fits here. But then he asked the Rebbe, people who this is made for will know this difference. The Rebbe knows this difference, the whole Ariches, that this each word has its deep meaning and whatever it is. But do they know the difference? So why is it important to change it for the publication? And the Rebbe answered him, aber von dannen darf herauskommen richtig. That whatever comes out from here, from the Rebbe, has to be right. Whether the people will understand it is something else. But mitzad the Rebbe, whatever he gives out has to be right. And therefore, the Rebbe told him to change the word.
The minik Chabad b'negei Hagbe and Glila is that the one that has Hagbe opens the Sefer Torah while it's laying on the bimah, picks it up while it's open and shows it to the crowd. Then he puts it down on the bimah again, rolls it up, closes it, then sits down on the chair, and somebody else puts on the gartel, puts on the mental, etc., etc. Most circles don't do it that way. Most circles do it in a way that the one that does Hagbe picks up the Sefer Torah, shows everybody, holds it open, sits down while the Sefer Torah is still open, and the one that gets Glil is the one that rolls it up from the top and puts on the gartel and puts on the mental. Now, there are letters of the Rebbe about it. There's a letter in Chelik Yudches of Igros Kodesh, page Tov Chov Zayin. There's also a letter in Igros Kodesh, Chelik Yudches, page Reish Bayalef to Rav Zevin about it. These are also printed in Likutei Sichas, these letters. But what I want to mention is that when the Encyclopedia Talmudis came out, I don't know if it was when the Erech Hagbe came out or when the Erech Glili came out, but when the Rebbe got this, and Rav Zevin, he was the main chief editor of the Encyclopedia Talmudis, so everything was on his achrayas, and he sent the Rebbe the copy of the Sefer when it came out. I don't know which one, whether it was the one for Hagba, the one in Glila. The Rebbe right away wrote him a letter, and wrote, how come in the Encyclopedia Talmudis is not mentioned the Minik Chabad, the way we do Hagba? And then the Rebbe added, especially that this way to do it was even approved, confirmed, by the Aruch HaShulchan. Now we know the Aruch HaShulchan was not a Chassid. Nevertheless, in Simen Kuf Mem Zayin, the Aruch HaShulchan brings this minig. He writes there, and I'll read what he writes. He said, after he writes a beer, he says, V'lochem be'emes b'mdinaseinu, b'botem b'droshe shel chsidim, magbiim ha'teire v'chezrim manichem neis alabima v'gelulim ba'atzmom, v'chezrim v'neitel neisa v'yeshev al safsel, v'ish poshut kerech hamapo mal b'shamil. So he brings the minig, the way I read it, that minig of Chassidim in his city, he says, is that they do it this way. And he writes that this is the better way, and he even writes after that, the minig of Ashkenazim is tomua. The minig of the way the others do it is not understood. And he tries to explain something, but Rebbe writes to Rav Zevin, so he doesn't understand why they didn't bring this minig in the Encyclopedia Talmudis as a minig, especially if it was confirmed by the Aruch HaShulchan. So what happened then, because Rav Zevin got this letter, so they printed a little zetele with this inyan on it, and they put it like a sticker to that volume of the Encyclopedia Talmudis. I don't know if it continued later, that sticker went down to the other later editions or not, but that's what happened then when this volume came out. In one of the early chofs, by the Fabrengen of Leil Simchas Torah, the Fabrengen before Hakofes, a few of the Choshev Chassidim missed the Fabrengen. They Fabreng the whole day on Shmini Atzeres, and obviously they said a little bit too much L'chaim, and they missed that Fabrengen that night. Then, by the big Fabrengen of Simchas Torah, the Rebbe turned around to Rabbi Yael and told Rabbi Yael to repeat what it says in the Likutei Diburim, B'negeya Uchok Chosid. Now, in the Likutei Diburim, in the first Chelik, Daf Chovov, Omid Beis, it starts talking about Reb Kusia Lepler. And he tells the story that Reb Kusia Lepler once climbed up by the window of the Alter Rebbe and said to the Alter Rebbe, Hak mir obnem linken Zait, could you cut off my left side, my Yetzer Hara? And the Alter Rebbe said something to him, and since then, he used to get a Gilui Eir. From time to time, he used to shine into him a Gilui Eir. And the way it's explained in a different place from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and that's in the Igros Kodesh of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Chelik Dalet, page Tov Kuf Mem Beis. There he tells that this used to happen to him from time to time, and he used to call it like this. When the Gilui Eir came, he would call it Chosid Prishal, which means the Chosid came. And when it would leave him, he would say, Uchok Chosid. The Chosid escaped, the Chosid ran away. And he explains there that when that would come, he would start dancing. Whoever was there, he would dance with him. And he tells in Likutei Diburim that once he was in a place where there was nobody there but the person, the mailman or somebody from the post office, he started dancing with him. So the Lashon there is Chosid Uchok. The Chosid ran away.
So the Rebbe turned around to Rabbi Yael and said, could you say over what it says in the Kutei Deburim about Chassidut Tzok? But the truth is, like I said, this expression Chassidut Tzok is not in Kutei Deburim actually. The Arum is there, but in the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe, in Chelik Dalad of the Igris, page Tov Kuf Mem Beis, there it tells these words of Chassidut Tzok. So the Rebbe told Rabbi Yael to say it over. And Rabbi Yael was standing there, and the Rebbe said, go up on the table and say it over. He got up, but he didn't say it. He was made like he doesn't know. So the Rebbe turned around to somebody else, and the Rebbe said he should say it. And that person also made that he doesn't know or didn't answer. Now, I don't know why they didn't say it, because the Taka didn't know, or because they didn't feel comfortable in front of the Rebbe, speaking in front of the Rebbe in public. But he also made that. And to the other person, the Rebbe said, a sharp word, I don't remember exactly the Lashon, something like, if I remember correctly, you don't even have that enough bittel to say, but they didn't say. Then the Rebbe turned around, and it was already closer to the second half of the Farbrengen, and Motzi Yontif, even people who didn't live in Brooklyn and lived in other cities around New York would come to the Farbrengen. They would take the car right after Yontif and come there and get to the Farbrengen in the middle. So one of them was Reb Schollenberg Gordon, who lived in Newark, and he would also do that, come to right after Yontif, leave the house and come to the Farbrengen. So the Rebbe said at this point, "Who is Schollenberg Gordon? Where is Schollenberg Gordon?" And they found him. He was there, and he came up closer to the Rebbe. He got up on the table, and the Rebbe said to him, "Bizokt avdira du bizboki in Likutei Diburim." They say about you that you're clear, you know clearly, you remember Likutei Diburim. Can you say over the story of Uchok Chassid, which means it's the story that the Chassid ran away? And he also, L'chatchila, did not want to say, but the Rebbe looked at him and he said, "No, say what the story is." So he did say the story, Bekitzer, of Uchok Chassid, and the Rebbe said, L'chaim to him, Chaim v'livrocho, and then the Rebbe continued with the Farbrengen.